My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. There are times in everyone's life where we seek answers to seemingly difficult and unanswerable questions. We search for these answers with family and friends, diligent research, and sometimes deep introspection and despair. Is there another way? Is there an intrinsic spiritual source that we can turn to for guidance? My guest this evening, Debra Landwehr Engle, says yes, and that source is our spirit guides. Deb Engle is the author of The Only Little Prayer You Need, The Shortest Route to a Life of Joy, Abundance, and Peace of Mind, and Grace from the Garden, Changing the World One Garden at a Time. She's the co-founder of Tending Your Inner Garden, a program of creativity and personal growth for women that has been featured in Time and Women's Day magazines. Deb teaches a class and a course in miracles, as well as workshops that use journaling and writing as tools for self-discovery. She and her husband Bob live in Madison County, Iowa, home of the famed covered bridges. And this evening, we'll discuss her latest book, Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. Welcome, Deb Engle. Good evening, Deb.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Wonderful to have you. So let's begin with your personal spiritual voyage and how you found your spirit guides.
Sure. I would say that it began in childhood when I had some experiences, I think like a lot of people, that I couldn't necessarily name or explain, but I just knew that there was some sort of presence with me. And at some key points in my life, especially in adolescence, at a time when I think we can all feel alone or cut off from other people, I had a couple of epiphany kinds of moments where I just knew that there was something more around me, a presence that I couldn't name, but that it was helping and nurturing and guiding me. And that gave me a huge amount of comfort and helped me get over some of those bumpy spots as I was growing up. But I would say one of the biggest moments came about 20 years or so ago when I went to a therapist who she did past life regressions. And in one of those regressions, I actually went to the time before I came into this lifetime and really saw a whole team of guides who were cheering me on. They were dressed in white kind of jogging suits, sweatshirts and jogging pants. And they had a couple of specific messages for me to help me understand why I came into this life, why I came into the family that I did, and to the part of the country that I did, or the part of the world, and what my purpose was. And from that moment on, that just opened up a whole new understanding of how we work together with our guides. And that's something that I've been exploring and really learning a lot more about ever since.
Now, for parents who have young children who seem to be in communication with invisible friends or something that the parents can't see, and it seems to be beneficent, not something that's negative, what advice would you give them?
I would just encourage them to listen, to really stop and listen to that child. I think our first response or our automatic response often is, oh, they're just making it up. That's just pretend. That's a wonderful imagination, but it didn't really happen. And I've seen this, I've witnessed it with parents or grandparents saying these things to children. And I think it's so important to take the time to just stop, listen to the child, really ask them, what did you see or what did you feel or hear? And give that credence, affirm them in that, because my understanding is that we come into this world still connected, still very much remembering the other side and all of this guidance and the unseen helpers that we have with us. And it's really through people discounting those experiences that we start to forget. So I always think, what would it be like to grow up not forgetting, to grow up surrounded by adults who really affirm that connection and help you hold on to it instead of forgetting what it is. So I would just advise parents, go to where the child is instead of trying to draw the child into where you are. And it may open up all sorts of wonderful things for you as well as the child.
I was going to say, not only would that lend to an opening of connection with spirit guides, but also opening to whatever that child is born into this world to bring, whether it be some form of creativity or sharing or leadership. Encouraging your child in whatever they're interested in when they're very young is something that's so, so important.
Absolutely. I think when you look at society and how it's very easy to be routed into the same expectations or the same path in our lives, I think, there's kind of a roadmap or a blueprint of how we're supposed to live our lives. And we give up so much of ourselves, so much of our uniqueness and our gifts and our purpose if we just blindly go down that path. So again, if we have parents or adults around us as we're growing up who can say, oh, this is what I see in you that's really unique. Here's a gift that you've been given. And how can we help you nurture that? Even if it seems like it's outside the bounds of what society might typically expect, you just think of how much happier everyone would be, how much more peaceful this world would be, and probably how much more quickly we would be evolving spiritually because everybody would be using those gifts that they came here to use.
Can you imagine every child in the world hearing these words from their parents? You're unique and you're special and you're loved. What a wonderful world we would have if every child could simply hear those words from their parents.
Isn't that the truth?
Absolutely.
Yes. No, I think it's so possible. I mean, you think it takes just a few seconds to say those words. And to do that with pure intention, to really embrace a child and say, oh, to be able to mirror to them, this is what I see in you, because I think so often, even as adults, we don't necessarily know what our gifts are. It's only when somebody can say, this is what I see in you that's unique, that we start to realize, oh, there's something I didn't even know about myself. So absolutely, taking that time with children is critical.
Now, the conversation before alluded to the fact that everyone has spirit guides. So do we all have spirit guides?
I believe absolutely we do. It doesn't matter who we are, what part of the world we live in, what we do. Even the people who, even terrorists or even people that we would look at as, that we would judge in some way, they have spirit guides too. We all are tapped into that same collective spirit, and we all have these individual beings who are here with us on our behalf. It's really just a matter of whether we choose to tune into them or not, and whether we become aware of all of the ways that they can help us.
Now, what if the person's foundational religion is contrary to the concept of speaking to spirit or spirit guides?
Well, again, I would just encourage people to be open. I think most religions have some form of this in their teachings. They may talk about angels or companions. If you really look at the language in most religions, you'll find some reference to helpers of some kind. So I think for the most part, it's not necessarily outside the bounds of religion. And I do encourage people, too, to absolutely think about this in the terms of their own teachings. For instance, in the book, I tend to use Christian language just because that's my background and the world that I came from. But I know for people who have different religious backgrounds, sometimes the words can stand in the way. And I really invite people to set aside particular words, like the word God, for instance, can be very charged for some people. Or, even angel can be kind of a charged word. If those words get in your way, set them aside, use the word that works for you, but don't let go of the concept, because the concept doesn't have anything to do really with religious teachings. It's just that by virtue of being human beings who are all part of a universe that basically is love and includes all forms of love, that we all have access to these beings, whether we know it or not.
Absolutely. And the ancient Hebrew foundational word for angel actually means messenger.
Right. And that's, I think, such a key word to hang on to and to investigate, to explore for yourself. Because my experience with the guides is that they are very much messengers for us. They all have messages, if we will just listen. And it's interesting because the title of the book is Let Your Spirit Guides Speak. And in a way that's kind of ironic because I believe our spirit guides are always speaking. It's really a matter of whether we're going to listen or not, because they definitely have messages for us.
Now, in what realm or dimension do you believe our spirit guides exist?
Well, my personal belief is that, once we let go of these bodies that we're in, we're on the other side. There are so many different names for this. We could call it heaven. We could just call it a different plane of existence. I believe that we are all, again, connected to that always. It's just that that veil comes down between us and our messengers, our guides, the heavenly beings, while we're here in these human forms, so that we can have a human experience. In a way, we need to really be fully physical so that we can learn the lessons and extend the love into this world in a physical way. But that doesn't mean that we are cut off from that other side by any means. We have total access to it. And I believe our real function here is what A Course in Miracles says, that we're here to extend that love, that divine love, the love of the universe, of God, whatever that word is for you, into this physical realm. And when we do that with the help of our spirit guides, we can do it much more efficiently and in a bigger way than we ever thought.
Absolutely. My guest this evening is Deb Engle. She's the author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. And we'll discuss more about spirit guides with Deb when we return after these messages on the OMTimes Radio Network.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Every Tuesday on Living with Moxie, join Shefali Burns and Donna Martouge in conversations designed to take you to the next level, where we highlight ideas, resources, and strategies that provide you with the leverage you require to meet and exceed your business and personal goals. Each week on Living with Moxie, we will lead conversations related to success, achievement, fulfillment, and extraordinary, vibrant living. Are you ready to live with Moxie? Join us.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to, are you? Kids, work, listening to the radio. You're busy, which is great because busy people can't get prediabetes. Oh my, I read that wrong. They can. Should have worn my glasses. So visit doihaveprediabetes.org and take a short test, because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
What if we got rewarded for every good decision?
Dinner. Meal needs a vegetable. Check.
Amazing!
Vegetables cooked with a healthier oil instead of butter?
Fantastic!
Replacing bad fats with healthier fats like those in canola or vegetable oil is good for your heart. Take up the challenge for good health, because the you of the future will say,
Fantastic!
Visit heart.org/face the fats. Canola Info proudly supports the American Heart Association's Face the Fats campaign.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening is Deb Engle, author of the new book, Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. Deb, we touched upon this briefly in the first segment of the interview, but what blocks most people from connecting with their guides?
I would say in one word, it's fear. And I use that word because it covers so many different emotions that we have. It covers distrust. It covers feeling not good enough, false humility, thinking, oh, these lofty beings, why would they even have time for me? Why would they be concerned about my life? It covers all of these different emotions that can really get in our way and keep us connected to our ego mind which really doesn't want us to communicate with our spirit guides. This is one of the things that I talk about in The Only Little Prayer You Need. That prayer is really all about asking for our fear-based thoughts to be healed. And when we take that idea and we apply it to this communication with spirit guides, think of it kind of like tuning in a radio. You know, if you don't have that radio dial tuned perfectly, you get a lot of static. And our ego belief in fear-based thoughts creates the static that stands in the way of that communication with the guides. So when we ask for those fear-based thoughts to be healed, we're really asking to remember who we are as children of God or children of divine love. And from that place, then when we start to talk and collaborate and co-create with our spirit guides, it's a whole different experience because it's clear communication, but it's also us bringing ourselves to that relationship as who we are rather than this feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough, but please, please, will you help me? That's a very different energy, than saying, oh, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm excited about fulfilling my purpose and creating what I'm here to create, and thank you for answered prayer and for helping me along the way.
Now, people getting beyond fear and getting beyond the sense of self-doubt or unworthiness is very understandable. What about those in the scientific or the logic community who won't even contemplate or consider the essence of this other realm? What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I would hope that they would read Albert Einstein's writings. You know, it's so interesting to go back to some of his writings and thoughts and teachings and understand that he very much knew that there was a spiritual side to science as well, and that this world is not just an accumulation of atoms and molecules, but that there is an intelligence, that there's something greater, an energy that is bigger and stronger than all of it and holds it all together. So that would be my first answer. But again, I think it's exciting to be in this particular time because even though there are still many, many doubters and skeptics, and I think skepticism, that can be a healthy thing, but we're also seeing much more of an intersection of science and spirituality. And I think even the people who have been kind of diehard doubters in the past are seeing things start to open up. They're opening up to other possibilities, even with quantum physics, acknowledging that there are different planes of existence. We're seeing different ways that the idea of another reality and understanding this reality that we think we're living in are starting to be explained in new ways.
I love when quantum physicists talk about particles that exist unless you look at them. If you look at them, they're not there. If you turn away, they're there.
Right.
and you were talking about, it's interesting you had mentioned about science and spirituality. I had heard a quote many years ago that I thought was attributed to Einstein. I actually cannot find the source of this quote, but the quote was that on one day, the paths of science and spirituality would cross, and on that day, we would know the mind of God, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful thought. But I'd love to find the attribution for that someday, so I can clearly say who contemplated that thought. That's a beautiful thought.
It really is.
Now, does one have to be psychic or spiritual to begin the conversation with their guides?
No, not at all. I consider myself not a psychic person, but at the same time, I think it's interesting. Again, words can get in our way sometimes. At the same time that I think I'm not necessarily psychic, I can also say to you, I think we are all psychic, and we just don't know it or claim it about ourselves. Right. I think the truth is that in the end, no matter how much of a spiritual journey we're on, or if we don't consider ourselves on that journey at all, it doesn't change the fact that those guides are right here with us and trying to communicate with us, trying to break through however they can. It's very likely that people who have no religious or spiritual beliefs or connection, maybe they've had experiences where they've been driving down the freeway and all of a sudden they just hear this voice out of the blue that tells them to move over or to take the next exit. And after they do, they realize that action helped prevent an accident or kept them out of an accident that occurred with other people. So these things happen, I think, no matter where we are in our journey, because they will break through somehow when it's necessary or when it's most helpful. And so our only choice is to say, if they're there anyway, and they're always trying to communicate with me, then really, what do I have to lose? To take a couple of moments just to sit in quiet, open myself up, quiet my mind, and ask them if they have information for me. Because literally, that's all it takes to start that relationship.
I can actually speak and testify to the experience you just mentioned. I was with my wife and son on a highway one day, and very, very heavily trafficked, but moving at full speed at 50 miles an hour on that specific roadway. And something in my mind said, get out of this lane, go to the next lane. And I never have ever had a sense of that before. And I immediately did that. I switched from the third to the left lane to the second lane to the left. And as soon as I did, there was a multi-car pileup on the lane that I had just jumped out of. And there was no visual indication. There was nothing that was actually transpiring when I heard that voice. But had I not made that jump, I probably would have been part of that multi-car pileup, which was just amazing to me.
Oh my. And as you're saying that, I just feel all of those truth tingles or chills that we sometimes feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that sense of connection. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I'm grateful to my guides for helping us that day. And I can absolutely say that is something that people can call to at any time when they have any type of situation where there's a sense of something. And recognize that there is an inherent truth in what you're hearing to do. And if you do it, chances are it will be beneficial to you from a standpoint of health and safety and perhaps even career development and other things in your life and right choices, and especially right choices.
Absolutely. And again, I think the more we develop that relationship and the more we get used to hearing that voice, the more we trust it, the more we can tune into it very quickly. And really then it just becomes like having a communication with someone literally who's walking alongside you every day. This is what I encourage people to think about as they read the book is I think we kind of put this whole relationship up on a pedestal, or we give it all sorts of sort of mystical significance that can stand in the way, again, because that creates a separation in our thought. It's like, oh, they're so far above me. I can only talk with them at certain times, or they'll only be there for me at certain times or in certain situations. And in truth, what I've experienced, and I know other people have experienced too, is that they literally are with us always. That's what I always hear when I sit down to have a conversation with my guides, is we are here with you always. And at any moment through the day that I just have a question, you can tune in. I know that it's exactly like talking to somebody who's sitting or standing right next to me. And that level of comfort to know that you literally are never alone and you always have guidance, always, whether it's, a problem during the day or you wake up in the middle of the night and have those fear-based thoughts that start to show up. Those are perfect times to just start a conversation with your guides and feel that immediate relief and comfort.
Absolutely. It's interesting. A lot of people, when they hear about spirit guides or the concept of miracles, they're expecting this technicolor, Moses and the Ten Commandments movie thing to open up, the heavens to open, and all these amazing light effects and sound effects and everything. And it's as simple as just listening for that loving, good, guiding voice, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And there's nothing too small to ask. It could be, what should I wear today? Or what day should I have my dentist appointment? Those things, they seem too trivial. Why would we waste our guide's time with that? But in truth, think of them as just a dear, dear friend. They want your happiness. That's what they're here for. So anything that will make your life easier matters to them.
What are the parallels between spiritual guidance and prayer?
Well, I think a lot of parallels there. And again, we so often use words to divide rather than to unify. So I think often our egos will try to figure out the difference. So it's kind of like, well, okay, what's the difference between angels and other light beings? Or is there a difference between prayer and communication with guides? I think these are great questions, but if we get too caught up in trying to figure out the fine points, then we lose the miracle. And the miracle simply is whenever we have a thought or we ask a question of a higher power, whether it's our guides, God, Jesus, Buddha, whoever it may be, we are initiating a desire and a question that is expansive for us. So I'm not trying to dodge the question,
No, not at
but
all.
I think there are really just any time that we sit in meditation and in quiet, in reflection, certainly that's prayer, whether we're talking to our spirit guide, we're talking to God. And certainly just if we are driving down the road and we're thinking about, oh, how do I handle this conflict at work? Or how do I handle this relationship issue with my spouse? And we ask that question. In my mind, that's prayer as well. A Course in Miracles, one of the things that I discovered actually as I was writing The Only Livable Prayer You Need is that book says on almost every page, ask for guidance, ask for guidance, ask the Holy Spirit. Always ask. Don't make any decision on your own. And I think that's the key, is that whether it's we call it prayer or we call it communication with our guides, it's that turning to spirit for the help that can help us with everything 24/7.
Absolutely. And our wonderful guide this evening is Deb Engle. She's the author of the new book, Let Your Spirit Guide Speak. Deb, please tell our listeners how they can get your books and find out more about you.
Sure. The books are available at Barnes & Noble stores, Amazon.com, and your favorite independent bookstore as well. And people can find out more about my classes and workshops and retreats at DebraEngle.com. And that's DebraEngle.com.
And we'll be back with more of Deb Engle and Spirit Guides on Destination Unlimited on the OMTimes Radio Network after these messages.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Are you in an interfaith relationship and thinking of getting married? For 18 years, Reverend Lori Sue Brockway has been creating personalized, loving, and romantic ceremonies for couples of all faiths and cultural backgrounds. Reverend Lori Sue's sensitivity to the needs of interfaith couples is reflected in the compassionate and inclusive way she addresses the concerns of parents and families. Reverend Lori Sue is also the author of several best-selling books on interfaith weddings and wedding vows. Selected as one of the top interfaith officiants by New York Magazine, Reverend Lori Sue serves couples in the New York metropolitan area and beyond. Find out more at her website, yourinterfaithwedding.com.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. Our guest this evening is Deb Engle. She's the author of the new book, Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. So, Deb, before the break, we were talking about communication with spirit guides. What are some of the basic ways that spirit guides communicate with us?
Well, I think they can communicate in so many different ways. Sometimes it can be through dreams. I think people who really pay attention to their dreams, that's a great way to start to develop that relationship, especially if you go to bed at night and before you fall asleep, you ask your guides specifically to show you or give you a piece of information or a message in your dreams. And then also ask them to help you remember that dream when you wake up so that you'll get that full message. That can be a very powerful way. Also, hearing a voice, as you described, as you were going down the highway that one day and heard the voice to move over into a different lane, sometimes those voices will just float in. Sometimes they can be pretty abrupt, especially if it's an emergency, as you described. Sometimes it can feel more like just a thought kind of floating in on the breeze, something very gentle. But you'll know it when you think it or feel it because you realize that it just kind of came in out of nowhere and settled there to give you the piece of information that you knew at that point. They also can communicate through animals. I think that happens in a lot of cases. I have my own personal story. When my dad passed away in 1989, he had been in a coma for several days, and we needed to make the decision about whether to take him off of the resuscitator. And actually, that was my mom's decision. We were all going to support what she needed. Well, she was obviously very anxious and torn up about it, just didn't know what to do. We all broke for lunch, went home for a little bit, left the hospital. And then when we came back that afternoon, my mom was just a totally different person. It was as though her face had changed. She was just peaceful. Something obviously had happened. And what happened, she told us, was that when she went home, she lay down to take just a rest. She asked God, her spirit guides, to give her a sign if it was okay to let my dad go. And just right afterwards, she started to hear this kind of squawking sound, just a lot of commotion in the back of the house. She went back to the window, looked out, and there were dozens of goldfinch birds flying around and around and around, just swooping. And she said it was so unusual because typically goldfinch are very competitive at the bird feeder. They're always trying to knock each other off. But in this case, they were just flying around in circles, almost in celebration. And as she watched, they circled for a couple of minutes, and then they all flew away. Well, my dad had loved goldfinch and had loved feeding the birds. And she knew in that moment that he was saying to her, it's okay, you can let go. And when she came back to the hospital, she was able to make that decision with complete inner peace. So animals, I think when we start to pay attention, those messages are coming through the natural world and especially through animals more than we even realize.
That's such a wonderful story that you just shared. And it leads to the question, are some of our guides actually loved ones who are either on the verge of departing or who have departed?
Very much so. And again, I think, we may think of trying to categorize spirit guides in one category and loved ones who have passed in a different category. But at the same time, again, it's all about that guidance that we're getting from the other side. So certainly, loved ones who have passed can be very present with us. I know one woman who's in one of the Course in Miracles classes that I teach. Her husband passed away a couple of years ago. And after probably about 45 years of marriage, they were extremely close. And she's very aware of the fact that he's there helping her, giving her guidance, really watching over her. And that their relationship continues, even though it's obviously in a different form. So I think absolutely our loved ones are there for us, or they can be. It depends on their journey as well and where they go and what their purpose is after they pass. But in many cases, they can be here to help us for quite a long time.
Absolutely. We had talked about this a little bit in the first half of the show, but what are some of the questions that beginners can use? You had talked about what should I wear today, but what are some of the questions that beginners can use to tune into their guides?
Sure. They can be anything from little things like what should I wear today, but then to the deeper questions like what do I need to know right now? That's a really important one because we get so caught up in all of our daily problems that we can't see the bigger picture. And of course, that's one of the huge benefits of talking with our spirit guides. They do see the bigger picture, and they can guide us through all of the complexity of all of the little things that we deal with every day. So just asking, what do I need to do? What do I need to know right now? Can cut through that clutter and help open up an insight that can be very helpful to you. It might be if there's a particular situation that you're dealing with, certainly ask about that. One young woman that is a client, she had gone through a competition, a fitness competition recently, and was one of 5 finalists nationally. Obviously really wanted to win this competition because there was a sizable monetary award involved in it, and she didn't win. So she sat down and she asked her guides why she didn't win or what she was to learn from that, what the lesson was. And the interesting thing, and this is something that I think is so key, often we go into these conversations with our guides with some expectations of what they might say, just as we go into conversations with our friends and family members or colleagues with those same expectations. But almost always the guides surprise us and take us in a whole different direction that we didn't expect. And that was the case in this particular situation. She asked, what do I need to learn, or what was the lesson in losing this competition? And they gave her a beautiful answer about not just her situation, but they said this whole thing that humans do of setting up winning and losing, that when somebody wins, everybody else feels bad. They said, what an awful way to live. It's not necessary to set things up that way for yourself. And they also said, just look at what you were able to achieve by putting 100% of your focus on this competition. Know that you can take that same focus and put it into other areas of life so that you can achieve and accomplish other things that you thought were beyond your dreams. So what she thought was going to be sort of a there, it's okay that you didn't win, really became this wonderful opening up to a whole new understanding of what's possible for her in the world. So just think about, some of the things that are on your mind. Maybe it's, how can I be more forgiving? Or how can I be more loving? How can I be a better parent? How can I walk into work every day with a greater sense of confidence? What do I need to know? What's standing in my way of the financial abundance that I want to achieve? I really advise people not to ask yes or no questions. Instead, ask those open-ended questions, because that's what paves the way for these beautiful answers that are really, that will shine a light on the bigger, even the bigger questions and the greater understanding of who you are.
Absolutely. And of course, when we do this, we have to take that advice and have to participate if it resonates with us, and it's not something that goes against our better nature. And I'm reminded of the story of this gentleman who was a very pious man who had attended his religious services on a weekly basis and prayed daily. And his wife needed surgery, and he had no health insurance, and he couldn't afford the operation. And he got down on his knees on one Sunday morning, and he looked up at the altar, and he said, Lord, he said, I've never asked for anything from you. He says, I've been a religious and faithful and pious man all my life. My wife needs this operation. Please let me win the lottery. A week goes by and nothing happens. Goes back the next week and again gets down on his knees, and he's wringing his hands, and tears are starting to edge from his eyes, and he says, Lord, I don't understand. What have I done to offend thee? I need this money for my wife's operation. That's all this is for her benefit, for her health and her life, and please let me win the lottery. And another week goes by and nothing happens, and he's kneeling again this following week, and he's renting his clothing, and he's wringing his hands, and he's just in total desperation says, Lord, I don't understand. I've been faithful. I've been good. What do you need me to do? And a voice from heaven came down and said, buy the ticket. And so many of us ask for something, and when we get the advice, we don't take the action to fulfill what we've been asking for. So everybody's got to buy that ticket.
Exactly. It really is collaboration and co-creation. And, we really are the hands and the voices and the eyes and the ears of spirit. So if we're going to make these things manifest, if they're going to fulfill their function, they need to do it through us. And that means we do have to participate. We do have to buy the ticket.
Absolutely. Now, how do we differentiate between communication with our guides and our own minds, egos, or inner stories?
That's a huge question. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that's often the biggest question for people as they start to communicate with their guides. There's always that natural tendency, especially because we all have those ego minds, of questioning whether this information is coming from a higher place or not. So there are a few ways that you can pay attention. One is to just kind of listen to the vibration or the energy, and definitely to the words or the feeling that you're getting from the spirit guides. You may not actually be hearing a voice or a message. It may just be kind of a sense of presence. If it feels loving, accepting, gentle, supportive, then you know that that's from a higher place and from the guides. If there's any kind of judgment or competition or blame or anger to it, then you know that that's not coming from the guides, because always their communication, in whatever form it comes, is going to be so gentle. And so it may be direct, as it was when you heard the voice to change lanes on the highway, but it's still going to be enveloped in love. So I think that's one of the key things, is just, I talked with a woman not too long ago, for instance, who had a question about her husband and about staying in her marriage. Well, one voice that she was hearing was making him less than and saying that she needed to move on because he really wasn't good enough. And the other voice was saying, he's one of your greatest teachers. Yes, this can be difficult sometimes, but there's a lot here for you to learn. Well, you can pretty easily see which one was coming from ego and which one was coming from a higher place. So just tune in. If you ever have any question, just keep asking, and you will get affirmation when it's coming from that higher place.
Sage guidance from our guide and guest, Deb Engle, and we'll be back with more of Deb and her book, Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, after these messages on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Hailing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for inspired conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening, Deb Engle, author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. Deb, we were talking about connecting with our guides and following their guidance, but are our guides unconditionally supportive, or can we offend them or hurt them in some way, perhaps by challenging their guidance?
It's, again, a great question. And at one point I would have said, no, we really can't offend them, because at that point I thought they were these higher, more evolved beings that were kind of like Teflon, who were beyond human emotions. But then back a few years ago, I had an experience that I describe in the book where I learned otherwise. And it was a huge lesson for me. Essentially what happened was that I had gone through a period of time where I was feeling a lot of scarcity emotions around money. And there was one particular moment that just kind of triggered this meltdown for me, this tantrum about money. And instead of doing what I typically would have done, which would have been to say to the guides, help me understand this, or what could I be doing differently, or where's the lesson? Instead, I decided to blame it all on my guides, which when I think about this looking back, is just so crazy to me. Obviously, I was in that insane ego mind at the time. And it wasn't just a quick tantrum or a quick blaming or anger. This lasted for a couple of days. I mean, I really was like a 2-year-old just throwing a fit and blaming them for everything, saying to them, I've been doing everything I can. I've been working hard. How come you're not supporting me? How come you're not helping me more? It was so bad, in fact, that as I told a good friend about this, she literally looked at me like, who are you? She was kind of afraid at that moment. So it was a vehement kind of feeling that I had against my guides at the time. Well, fast forward a couple of months, I was on the phone with a woman who works with entities and guides. And I was basically having a conversation with one of my guides through her. So I asked about money. And so the way this worked was that I told her what the question was. She asked my guide, and then she relayed the answer, which just as kind of a quick aside, even though obviously I believe the most important thing is for us to have our own direct communication with the guides, I also believe that every once in a while, going to someone who can also help affirm what we're hearing or shed light on what we're hearing can also be helpful. Sort of like going to the doctor for a checkup. We may know our bodies and know what we need, but it's also helpful to check in every once in a while. So that's what I was doing. Anyway, I asked this question about money. There was a pause on the phone, and then she said, I've never heard an answer like this before. Let me ask again. So she asked my primary guide again about money. And there was a pause, and then she said, well, I've never heard this before, but he's saying they don't have to help you with money because you're not appreciative. You're not grateful for everything that they do. So they've just decided not to help. And at that moment, I mean, I could just feel my whole body flush. It was like I was busted because I remembered this meltdown that I'd had a couple of months earlier, and I knew that that was why they were not willing to help me. So I told her about it. She said, absolutely, you need to apologize to them, which I did profusely. And it was a huge turning point for me in my relationship and understanding with my guides, because at that point I realized all of the things that we need in our relationships with one another as humans, things like dignity and respect and acknowledgement and gratitude, our guides are not immune to those things. They need those things too. It's not as though they have risen to such a place where those things are no longer important. Those are. And we need to treat our guides with exactly the same kind of respect and dignity and gratitude. Gratitude is huge that we use with each other, that we treat each other with. So that to me is maybe one of the most important stories that I can share with people, because it helps define that relationship and bring it out of kind of that lofty space and really ground it and say, this is exactly like being with your best friend or a parent or a grandparent or any loved one. This is not some odd, far out kind of experience and relationship. This is an everyday, natural, grounded relationship, just like you have with the other human beings in your life.
That's a wonderful sharing, and that leads to two questions. Number one, do you have a gratitude practice with your guides right now?
I do. I would say every morning when I wake up, I just immediately express my gratitude to them. Plus, I think that's a wonderful way to just check in with them, to say good morning. It's kind of like if you were to get up in the morning and get out of bed and go in the kitchen and put some coffee on, and somebody from your household, one of your kids or your spouse, is sitting there at the kitchen table, and you didn't say hi to them or you didn't acknowledge them, it would be kind of rude. Same thing with your guides. As soon as you wake up or get up, say good morning to them, express your gratitude for their help throughout the day, and maybe just have a quick conversation about what you want your day to be like or how you want to tune in with them through the day. And then, of course, at night, too, before you go to bed, just express gratitude. Think back through all of the things, the blessings from that day, all of the gifts, all of the ways that they helped you, and say thank you too for the ways that they helped you that you're not aware of. Because in truth, they are, oh my gosh, the existence is so vast and so beyond what we can even imagine or be consciously aware of. So gratitude is just such an important part of the equation. And, over time, I found that I'm just talking to and thanking my guides constantly through the day in an ongoing conversation.
And the other aspect, the other question that your point brings about is, do our guides, in addition to gratitude and thanks, do our guides need anything else from us? Is there something we can do to help them?
Absolutely. And it was another aha in my own journey when I realized it wasn't just a one-way street. This relationship with my guides is not just all about them helping me, as I had thought for a long, long time. What I came to realize is that they have their purposes and their functions to fulfill, their missions as well, and they need us to help them fulfill those missions. They can't, what they can accomplish in this world needs to be through our extension and expression and expansion of it. So if we're in a situation, for instance, I was talking with my husband about this just recently. He was approached by someone who wants him to do some work for him. And it could be an incredible opportunity, almost to the point where my husband doesn't believe it could really happen. And what we talked about is it would be easy to shut down that opportunity and just think, it's impractical. I don't know if I'm the right person for it. But if we look at it from the standpoint of the guides, it could be that they need his energy to be working with the people who have approached him, not just in the construction work that he would do, but just in the kind of person he is and the energy that he would bring to that situation. That's what we don't know. That's the big picture that we can't see. So if we start to hem and haw and second guess and not follow the guidance that we're given, it can be very frustrating for the guides because we're just putting the brake on fulfilling that mission that they want us to fulfill. And of course, if it's something that they're giving us to do, it's also going to be life-affirming and growthful and expansive and joyful for us as well. So it can be a win-win as long as we don't let that ego fear shut us down and say no when yes could open up all sorts of possibilities.
So our relationship with our guides is absolutely a two-way street.
Absolutely, yes. And it's so important to remember that, to ask them, this is another great question, to ask them from the beginning, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? Or what do you need from me? How can I help you?
Absolutely. Now, in Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, you mention spirit envy. What is spirit envy?
Mm-hmm. Spirit envy is taking the idea of the grass is always greener on the other side and applying it to spirit communication. One of the examples that I use is that years ago, because I'm blessed to have a lot of friends who are very aware of spiritual energy and guides in different ways, I knew several people who could see their guides very quickly or very clearly. Typically, I can't. Every once in a while, I'll get a sense of them, or as I said in that past life regression, I was able to see them then. But typically, I hear a voice or I hear messages, and I'm not able to see them. Well, I was looking at what my friends could do, and I was envious of that. I thought, well, they must have a better relationship or a more evolved relationship with their guides. They must be doing it right, and I must be doing it wrong because I can't do what they do. That's spirit envy. And what I've learned, because one time I sat down and asked my guides, how come I can't see you like other people do? And their answer was so key. They said, the work that I do and what I'm here to bring to this world relies so much on ability to listen to other people, to listen to myself and to my guides, that they speak to me so that I can develop that ability, so that I can become a more acute listener. If I could see my guides, then that ability to listen wouldn't be as fully developed. So that was a huge lesson. It's like there's a purpose and a meaning in all of their communication, in the way that they present themselves, in how you feel as you communicate with them. So if you ever have any questions about it, just ask. Ask, why is it that you show yourself to me primarily through spirit animals, for instance? Or why do I see you or experience you in dreams instead of other ways? And they'll be able to get that message to you about why that's really perfect for you.
What would our world be like if we all listened to our guides?
Oh, I think it would be heaven. I think this is where we're going in our spiritual evolution, is to have that fear healed both within us and outside of us, so that we can clear up that static, tune in, and follow that guidance, feel that comfort, and know that we truly are never alone.
Absolutely. And what's next for Deb Engle and her guides?
Well, at this point, I'm doing a lot of work with workshops on both books, The Only Little Prayer You Need and Let Your Spirit Guide Speak. So I'll be doing a lot of travel and workshops with those. I also do a lot of work with writers who want to develop their own manuscripts to put some kind of a positive message out there in the world. So I have some retreats and workshops coming up around that as well. So it's I just feel very blessed to be able to spread these messages in all sorts of different ways.
And where can our listeners find out more about those events and your books and about you?
Sure, they can go to DebraEngle.com. That's DebraEngle.com. Please feel free to sign up for my list so that when I send out newsletters with upcoming events, you'll receive those. And also the books are available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent bookstores.
Deb, what a delight to have you on and share your experience, the experience that we all can have and share, and make this world a better place by listening to our guides. And I look forward to having you back on in the not-too-distant future.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it, too.
And listeners, thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I am Victor the Voice Furman. See you next week, everyone. Have a great one.